All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to Friggin' Good Politics. Greg and Derek here, and we got a special guest, Chris Chapin. He's
Oh
joining us.
yeah.
We're going to be talking Ontario politics, Mark Carney, Atlantic premiers, Donald Trump, Pierre Poilievre, and a few other things to round out our day. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, pleasure to join you guys.
Hey, we got to give a little shout out to Chris here. Chris was
Yes,
part of this big Ontario election win.
you may have heard
The
of it.
You may have heard of it. Yes, for Nation Domination. We'll get into that. Chris used to work in opposition in Queen's Park for various conservative opposition leaders. Very experienced political hand, and his business partner, Michael Diamond, was he the campaign manager or what was
No,
he?
I don't think he had a official role beyond he's the president of the party here
Oh,
in
he's
Ontario.
president of the party, right? And
So
he
Mm-hmm.
and he was on the road the whole time and doing
he
all that.
was he was on the RV with the premier the whole time. I think nobody's looking forward to a good night's sleep other than maybe the premier than Michael is. I think he can't get home to his bed fast enough tonight.
That's
Um,
awesome. That's good. Yeah, we're gonna have to have Michael on and give us some stories from the RV. I'm sure he's got some
I
good.
think there's
That would
I
be.
think there's an NDA for that. I'm not sure you're gonna
Yeah,
get
we
into this.
probably can't share any of that.
Yeah, what happens on the RV stays on the RV.
That's
We
awesome. But yeah,
can't get
really
like
good
a
to have.
JFK files release on the Doug Ford van files. Like, can we get that somehow? Or do we have to
Oh,
wait 75 years?
now we sound like we do you have the Epstein files too? Like while we're talking about this,
Oh gosh.
apparently all the Twitter had it yesterday.
Yeah.
So
That's
Yeah, that
awesome.
was
Well,
weird.
yeah, it's really good to have you, Chris. And yeah, Upstream Strategy Group is his company.
Yes.
Very good consultancy on doing fantastic work across the country. So if you need a skilled government communicator, getter doner type of person, Chris, Michael, and the team there, really good guys. You won't be sad if you hire them at all. In fact, you'll be quite pleased and get a lot of your things done. So thanks for coming on, Chris, and giving us some
yeah,
insight here.
pleasure to be with you guys.
All right, let's dive in. Our first play of the week. We got Ford Nation Domination Three-Peat. Chris, you worked on this campaign, so we're going to pass it off to you. What are your thoughts on Doug Ford's win?
You know, historic comes to mind is like the only word, right? Like it's very few people have ever done what Doug Ford just did. I think we came just short of breaking the record in Ontario for the first party. I mean, there's a couple recounts, so
Yeah.
by the time this
Oh, okay.
airs, it might still break the record, but three straight consecutive majority governments is
Very rare.
something only a few premiers in this country's history have done. Brad Wall comes to mind. Gary Doer
Yeah.
did it in recent memory, but like those are the only couple premiers that have done it. So it was a historic win. I think we were all reflecting last night that, you know, it wasn't that we were disappointed, but I think we thought we were going to pull in a few more seats. I think the other parties, from my perspective, really retracted their efforts. They were trying to talk a big game in the closing days that, they were still gunning for premier, but we knew that wasn't true.
Yeah.
And so they really refocused their efforts on where they could win seats. And so, we were in a bit of a fight in a couple of ridings across the province, but I haven't even seen if they've changed it, but I think, an 80, 81 seat majority is a pretty darn good
That's big.
majority, pretty
Yes.
big. And I think there's something to be said about the fact that provinces, across the world, people are booting out incumbents
Yeah.
Yeah.
at record pace. And so to win a third consecutive majority, like Doug Ford did last night is, pretty damn impressive. And to do so, giving us another 4 years here in Ontario, I think, I think the best way to put it is the largest cheer in the convention hall last night was when we knocked off Bonnie Crombie
The Crom Bus.
as liberal leader, right? Like it wasn't that like it, the announcement came so fast for our win
Yeah.
that they barely had it on screen yet. Like, they barely adjusted the AV in the room um because it hadn't like we hadn't put any of the feeds live on the big screens yet. And we all turned around and was like, I think that says PC win in the bottom right corner. And they'd already declared us the victor. And I think that was
Wow.
like 9:04.
Yeah.
And
Six
so
minutes. It was 6 minutes.
Yeah, there you go. I was going to say it was so quick, and so, but the biggest cheer was reserved about an hour in when the
Ah,
check mark went up beside Sylvia Gualtieri. I
yeah.
might butcher her last name, but knocking off Bonnie was a darn good feeling after the campaign they ran against us.
Yeah.
You,
The
you know,
Crom
it's
bus
funny.
crashed and burned. It was a sad thing to witness.
Yeah, like it's funny that some people are sort of saying today it's like, oh, this wasn't that big of a win. It was, it was barely a win. And it's like you knocked off your main competition. She didn't win her
Yeah.
seat. She's for some
Yeah.
reason staying on, which is bizarre to me.
For now,
She will not be there in 3 weeks.
she thinks she's staying on. Whether she stays
Yeah.
on is a whole other question.
Yeah.
No.
But it's like people don't. Okay, is it a loss? Like I think the third win is like less triumphant than your first. The first one's always the most amazing. Second's
Oh
like,
yeah.
whoa, we did it again. And now it's like, I guess we're still here.
Oh, we
Yeah,
got to go back to work now.
yeah, it's exactly that, right? Like it was a fascinating, I was doing some media last night, and so some of the reporters I was having conversations with were definitely trying to spin that angle that like,
Yeah.
oh, well, this is a disappointment. I was like, yeah, I mean, did we have our hopes set higher based off of kind of what we were seeing in some polling? Sure, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you
There's some
know,
big polls there.
there was, yeah, like, I mean, you have high 40 polls in a 3 and 3.5 party system. You'd think you're gonna win maybe a few more seats, but
Mhm.
um, one of the things I kept stressing even before the results came in is we are we're a very big province. Derek, we dwarf you
Yeah.
guys by like a scale of, a lot.
A lot. Yeah. I don't know what that's a
And
lot. Yeah.
so and what I think is always fascinating that most, especially the journalist side, don't ever get, because they don't really get the political side of the game, is the NDP, for example, have like incredible little stronghold pockets in some of the
Yeah.
cities across the city. Like, Greg, like this, like down in the London area, like
Yeah.
it's really hard to knock off their incumbents there. And
Yeah.
I don't know if we've ever seen, like, we talk a lot about like their vote efficiency. And I was having a conversation with a reporter just before the results came in. I said, he's like, I think it's going to be a bad night for the NDP. And I was like, don't count your chickens yet. Like, they have like this
Mm.
really weird, incredibly effective vote efficiency that they can win in pockets of this province, that even if, like, ignore those top line polling numbers and even ignore some of like the regional breakdowns, because the way the pollsters group pockets of the province, it's
Yeah.
almost disingenuous, because, like, oh, some will call it like the Golden Horseshoe down in like Niagara and Hamilton. It's like those are completely different parts of, depending on what you include. Like, if you've
Mm.
buried Burlington in there, um, that Burlington has nothing in common with Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
And so just the way you get a sample size from that, I think was, uh, I think the results showed last night was something you really can't equate to be the same. And so, they did really well down in London. They always do strong in Kitchener. They did overly impressively well in downtown Toronto. That I think,
Yeah.
I was listening to a couple podcasts leading into election day, and people were writing Marcel's obituary, saying like she might not even win her own seat. And I was like, guys, keep your eyes out for Bonnie and the
Right.
Liberals, because like they're, you know I think that'll be the most interesting thing to see, taking a deeper dive in the coming days, is a party that had, I think they had 29-30% of the popular vote and
Yeah.
won 13 seats. Like,
Vote split.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they came second in a lot of places, but
Yeah.
nowhere close to winning. And
If you ain't first, you're last.
Ricky Bobby.
Yeah. Ricky Bobby.
That's what my daddy always told me.
So was voter turnout an issue here for the PCs? Like, you had enough popular support, but is there complacency here? Third term, snap election, a little anger towards calling this election. It's cold out. Like, what do you think was going on there?
No, it's a good question. I don't think so. Honestly, for the last I saw last night, before I went to bed, was voter turnout was higher than I expected. Like, I
Oh,
I
really?
re I
It was
really thought,
45%,
yeah,
which
Oh,
is
wow. That's
everyone
pretty
thought it
good.
was going to be like 35 or lower.
yeah, like everybody
Hmm.
had this baked in. This was going to be the lowest voter turnout
Hmm.
in Ontario's history, and there were a couple, precursors out there that kind of indicated it might not be. Like, some people
Hmm.
jumped on the advanced poll numbers that said like, oh, only 6% of people came out. Well, we only had 3 days of advanced polling. So
Yeah.
like
Right.
the
It's
way
different.
the 6% broke down is the daily total was the highest it had been in a couple
Oh,
elections.
interesting.
So there was some indicators there. It's kind of what I keep going back to. If you go past like kind of the top line numbers that was getting reported in the media,
Yeah.
um, there were some indicators there that, okay, maybe
Hmm.
this isn't exactly where we're seeing it. So, no,
Interesting.
I don't, turnout wasn't an issue. Listen, again, I keep going back to this. Like, it was an incredible win for us
It
last night.
was.
Like,
Yeah.
we spent 15 years in opposition, and we won 80. So I don't know what the seat total was.
80-ish. 80-ish.
80, yeah,
80-ish.
81 or something like that.
We'll see what it turns out to
I'll
be.
say, like, we're going back with more seats than we ended Parliament at, and so
Yeah.
And
it's
4
still
more
not,
years.
and 4 more years. It's still not the
Ford
caveat that
more years.
four more years,
4 more years.
and I joke to anybody, I'm trying to get the trademark for the Ford Pete, because I think he's gonna I think he's gonna win again in 4 years. I think he has this incredible ability to connect with voters that I've never
Yeah.
seen before. And
Yeah.
in every part of the province, like, that's the thing that we don't get the coverage that I think we should, is we're winning seats in Northern Ontario that would
Yeah.
have previously been unheard of.
Yeah.
We had seats down in Windsor, Ontario, that
Yeah.
we used to come a distant third in. It was some of the first declared seats in the
Mm.
entire province. Like, we won huge majority, turnout wins down in a couple of the Windsor ridings. And so that's just, I think, a testament to Doug. And so when people try to, like, everybody's trying to find some angle to paint this, and I was like, well, I'll just keep it, our victory party had a bunch of glowing threes, and I think that was the thing to remember, was it was a three-peat, and
Yeah.
it's pretty damn hard to win 3 times, and I think we're all looking forward to the idea of having a 4 in the room next time.
Well, that would be unprecedented for sure. But he's obviously found a sweet spot here. He's done very, very well. Like, the thing that's most impressive to me is that he survived COVID and still
Yes.
keeps winning. Like, that's almost unheard of now all over the world, that you
Mhm.
can do that and still be very popular at the end. So what is the secret sauce? Is it this new coalition of workers and union people? Like, I saw so many union leaders introducing him in all
That's
these cities and
insane, man.
mayors.
Like
That's
the
bizarre.
like if you were to go back 10, 15 years until PCHQ in 2020, whatever, 20, because it happened last time too, 22, and then in
Yep, yep.
25, you're going to get this laundry list of unions endorsing you. They would have laughed you out the room.
It's
How did he do that?
honestly, and this is like not me just spinning it, hard work. Like, they actually
Yeah.
put the work in
Mm.
that's required. You go to enough shop floors, you go to enough union halls, you talk to these
Right.
guys, and you have a conversation with them. And Derek, to your question, like, what's Doug's secret sauce? The guy listens. Like, the guy
Mm.
actually listens, and when he gets criticized, he reflects on it. And
Mm.
if he's in a pickle, we've all seen, like, the Doug Ford apology or the Doug Ford flip. Like, but it was like, okay, like, isn't that what you kind of want out of a
Yeah.
politician? Like,
Most people do.
well, most people clearly do, but, like, even if, like, it's not we've all worked in the political world. Like, it's not like you're so used to the idea of white knuckling it through an issue.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and Doug has this opposite approach, where it's like, the people don't want me to do this anymore. So I'm going to go out publicly and say, I screwed up. I made a mistake. I'm going to do the opposite. You guys don't want me to do
Yeah.
this? Fine, cool.
Right.
And it's incredible. You hear it at the doors. You hear this all the time from him. Is like,
Mm.
yeah, we might disagree with him sometimes, but we really appreciate the fact that he'll change his mind. It's the
Yeah.
opposite. It's the opposite
People
of,
like
like,
that.
Trudeau,
You're right.
Trudeau with the carbon tax, right? And so
Right.
Yeah.
No.
I think it rubs partisans the wrong way at times, where
It
I think
does.
some people be like, oh, Doug, why'd you change your mind on that? You should have just kept going, keep your pedal to the metal. And it's like, yeah, but, like, how many of us are there versus, like,
Yeah.
the actual electorate? And that's why, we're sitting here today winning our third straight majority, is this guy has this
Mhm.
incredible ability to understand what the public wants and what's
Right.
pissing the public off,
Yeah.
and how to flip the switch, get back in the good books. And I mean, yeah, you talk about COVID. We had a very I was joking, I ran into a former elected official in Ottawa a couple days ago, and
Mhm.
I said, I made the joke, I was like, if you remember the first year of the Doug Ford administration. It was chaos. Like it was crazy times. Like he came in bull in a china shop. Like you wouldn't recognize the same premier he is today.
No,
Right,
it's
right.
very
And
different. Yeah.
looking back at it then, it was like if you told me we were going to win another election, yet alone a second majority after that, I would have told you were
Mm.
nuts.
Hmm.
Um, but through COVID, I think he really understood how to take charge himself
Right,
and trust his instincts, not just the people around him.
right.
And then fast forward, I mean, like, I think he relished the idea of going up against, Trump and said, like,
Yeah.
I actually am like, I'll happily be, he got the nickname, I think, from some as Captain Canada. But
Yeah.
I think
Yep,
like, he relished
it
the
worked.
idea. It was like, sure, I'll punch this guy back in the face if that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just who he is as a person. Um
Hmm.
the guy listens more. I mean, we obviously had our ads that you would have seen over the years. You can call me, text me anytime, but like
Yeah.
Right.
it actually is true. And to know, like,
Hmm.
you'd hear stories from like the campaign trail where somebody'd show up. I think there was one uh either the day before election day, I think, and some guy showed up at one of the shop floors wearing the original Ford Fest Rocks t-shirt from like
Nice.
Rob Ford's like
Oh my
original Ford
gosh.
Fest. And it was like,
Yeah.
if you're not from here, if you didn't live in Etobicoke, I'm staring out the window of the hotel, like looking at his riding. And it's like, if you didn't understand these guys and the commitment they have to their constituency, then you don't understand Ford Nation.
Yeah.
You don't understand what it means to have um a counselor that would show up at your door if you had a problem, like not just email you back, call you back, have his staff call you
Right.
back. Like, my grandparents lived in Rob's riding my entire
Oh,
life.
really?
And yeah, and I remember like there was a Rob Ford magnet,
Hmm.
on the fridge. Like there was like Rob would call back my grandfather. Like my grandfather
Hmm.
loved Rob, and it was because that's what his dad did when his dad was an MPP. And
Yeah.
it really, like, to say it's all in the family is just, it's not an understatement. Like they really
Right.
are, they they are a political dynasty, and I mean, starting to shape up. Like, truly, it's kind of
It
crazy to say,
is.
like one of the greatest political dynasties in this country's history, if not,
True.
getting damn close to being the biggest political dynasty. I mean, I think only the Trudeaus could go up against them
I
at
was
this
going to
point.
say, yeah, there would be a competition from the Trudeaus, but there's
Yep.
also different levels of politics too. Like the Trudeaus really only ever existed at the federal level. Doug
Hmm.
Ford's really captured that provincial level
Yeah.
dynasty. Yeah.
I think you could say they sort of mastered retail politics. Like
Oh,
Yes.
like really just caring about your constituents and doing whatever it takes to work for them is a strategy and it works. Like some people are just they're very fancy and they have good words. And that's kind of the Trudeau brand. It's like they're these
Yeah.
progressives and very articulate typically and I'm trying to think of a nice way to say it. I don't like complimenting Trudeau very often, but he's got that sort of charisma thing
I
that his
got, I
dad has.
got, I got it. I got it for you. So there's a
Okay.
clip. I'll try to send it around to you guys. So if you
Okay.
you want to include it afterwards, but there's a clip back from like the Sun News days of, I think it's Rob and Doug on
Right.
their show. I think the show was called Ford Nation on Sun News Network back
Oh,
in the day.
nice. Yeah.
And I'm not sure which of the brothers said it, but I think it was Rob, and he described himself as, I'm not one of those fancy big word kind of use guys. And that's
That sounds
that's
like
the way,
Rob.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like, I think I nailed that.
I love
It's
it.
I might have, but that's it. He's like, I'm not one of those
Yeah.
fancy big use word guys. Like that's
Perfect.
that's
Yeah.
they are the two of them were the greatest retail politicians I think this country's
Mhm.
ever seen.
Yeah.
They're different.
It's oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Finish your thought there.
No, I mean, they're different. Like between the brothers, they have different
They are. Yeah.
styles. I'd say Doug's much more polished than his brother was.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
but they both just understand. Um, they both just understand that, like, connecting with people on a human level
Right.
matters. And I think that was something that we always joke, just like down south of the border, like Ford derangement syndrome. Like these people just
Yeah.
they can't understand. They hate him for no reason unless you meet the guy and then you're like, oh my God, the guy's,
This guy's kind of the best. Yeah.
yeah, this guy's really nice. Like,
Yeah.
he called me a rock star. What a I haven't been, I've never been called a rock star
Yeah.
before.
Like
And
I'd call him the ultimate everyman. Like I always talk about marketing archetypes of people. The Ford brothers know who they are. Like they are the everyman
Yeah.
retail politics masters, where they listen to people, they get stuff done for them, they return phone calls, they knock doors.
Yeah.
And it's so funny how politicians they try to be somebody else that they're not, and then they end up failing, in my opinion. I've seen this very, very often, but they know who they are. We're going to talk about Jagmeet Singh in a bit, and he has no idea who he is, in my opinion. He's trying to be the everyman, he's not. But these guys
Yeah.
actually are the everyman, and they lean into it so effectively.
Well,
I,
and
I,
people chirp really hard, like Pierre and definitely Doug. More so Pierre, I guess, over the like it's all slogans and no substance or whatever. And it's like, well, you're trying to be too clever by half. You're trying to enunciate your very very fancy left wing ideas. No one cares. You're speaking at it way too high a level. No one cares. You want make fun of the slogans all you want. That's what the average person understands. And actually, Derek, I think you had a LinkedIn post about some polling that Abacus Data did, where they were like, "Don't say this, say this." Like, don't say
yeah.
whatever tax brackets, blah blah blah. Talk about cutting taxes. I'm forgetting the exact
No,
verbiage.
yeah, it's simple words. Yeah,
Simple
it's talking
words.
about paychecks rather than wage growth, and
Yeah, yeah, that's what it was.
it's
Yeah,
everyday
thank you.
words rather than big fancy
Yeah, and
academic
Doug
words
Ford
like
has
dictionary.
absolutely
Big
mastered
fancy
that.
words. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
I'm not a big fancy word guy. I'm not a fancy book
Yeah.
learner. That was the
Yeah.
Trailer Park Boys, right? It's like I'm not into your fancy book learnings.
Yeah.
and
No,
Doug Ford has a bit of that Trailer Park Boys energy, like that. All right, boys,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
friggin' go. Come on.
he
yeah.
he just because he's normal, and
Yeah,
I think
Right,
like
right,
that is that secret sauce when it comes to Doug. It's just like Doug's normal. Like
right.
and it's hard to kind of picture that, like, embrace like his like professional life, obviously what he does, but it's just like he he'll listen to his advisors, but then he's gonna make his ultimate gut check himself.
yeah,
And then it does resonate. And so yeah, we record number of endorsements, but that's because, like, he went out and toured the province. And somebody somebody on a different podcast made a show made a clip about a comment about Doug, and it was just like, and that kind of that union angle where they're like, oh, like, you don't understand, like, you guys are criticizing him for wanting to build these highways, and it's reckless and this and that, and it's like those are our future jobs. And so
yeah,
when you're criticizing that, you're taking a shot at our future economic
Right.
opportunity.
yeah.
And I don't think the opposition's wrapped their head around that, like, okay, like,
Not at
those
all.
are voters. And I think, like,
Mhm.
to David Piccini, our labor minister, and his team, I think they landed on something like 21 union endorsements across the province,
It's
like
Wow.
crazy,
three
absolutely
300
crazy.
300,000 union members across the province. And I mean, you always have to do the math. Like, they've all got wives and, maybe
Yeah,
kids and family members. Like, you bring in 1 million people that weren't voting for you
Mhm.
before, and then you wonder why you're winning, majority after majority. It was like, because they put the hard work in.
Right.
But like, you actually, Lisa Raitt had a great column or op-ed in the National Post this week. It was said, like, it's not just lip service that he was paying to these unions. It was like, we're going to invest in you. We're going to invest in
yeah,
training centers for you. We're going to, they brought on, I think we got the endorsement. I'll butcher which the official name of the organization, but like the firefighters here in Ontario.
Right.
And it's
Right.
because, Doug had sat down with them, and David Piccini, our labor minister, sat down with them. And one of the big concerns was like, um, benefits for on, I believe it's like on the job cancer, smoke
oh
inhalation,
really?
stuff like that. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
not only did they listen to it, I think they back stamped like the benefits to, retirees. It was like, hey, you sacrificed your life for us. We're going to take care of you. And those are the
Nice.
kind of things that it goes beyond just like, oh, just endorse me, I'll get your back. I'm going
Right.
to do
Right.
things for you in the next
Yeah.
election. It's like,
They're
no,
doing
well,
stuff.
you actually do stuff for these guys.
Yeah,
And, it's you scratch my back first, I'll scratch your back.
Yeah. It's just good like leadership and business strategy overall. It's
yeah,
like listen to your clients, respond to their needs, work hard to fix it, like be a
yeah,
good person. Like what even at MASH, like one of our statements of belief we call them is give a shit. Like
Yeah.
honestly, like I feel like Doug Ford like gave a shit about what these needs were of the firefighters and people. And it's like, hey, that's actually a reasonable thing that you're concerned
yeah,
about. Let's see
Yeah.
what we can do about it. And like
Well,
most politicians, they just don't seem to go that far, or they're not willing to like they don't have the humility to change course and make stuff happen.
yeah.
And for longevity in politics or business or anything, it's like you gotta find out when I screwed up. Say,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
that was stupid. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And then like fix
Well,
it and work hard to fix it.
well, I
And
think one of the
yeah,
things with the Fords always was, it was like their mantra was customer service excellence.
Right.
And
There you go.
and but think of that as like any other politician that would think of the words. But like these guys, they had the family business. Like,
Yeah.
well, customer service matters, right? Like, are your
Yes.
customers happy? And your customers, when you're a politician, are your constituents. And so,
It's a very good point.
are you delivering customer service excellence to them?
Mhm.
And when you start thinking of it through that lens, calling everybody back makes sense. Giving them your phone number
Yeah.
makes sense. Imagine operating a business and your clients didn't have your phone number.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, people mocked the premier, but it's like, no, like if you texted him right now, he'll call you back. The only stressful thing is he'll probably call you back from a blocked number.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
sure whether it's like, a
A
spam
spam
call,
call. Yeah.
or the premier. And I've done it before where I've ignored his call and you realize afterwards when the voicemail comes through and you're like, oh shit,
I probably should have answered that.
I ghosted the premier of Ontario. Like, probably shouldn't
Way to
do
go,
that.
Chris.
Probably shouldn't do that again. But
You
like he
blew it.
does, he calls everybody back. Like, you text him, he'll call you back. He'll, at the very least, he'll text you back. And it's
That's wild.
not some staffer on the bus or in the car with him. It's
Mhm.
him. He'd rather do that than just about anything else. That's what he prioritizes above everything else, is responding back to the people that are trying to talk to him. And so when we run the ads, it's like, what matters to me is the people, and just talking to the people. And we pump that ad, into every Amazon Prime subscription across the,
I saw them when I was watching
across
my Jack Reacher. I saw them.
exactly across the province. Like,
Mhm.
it's because, like, if you've ever interacted with him or you've known anybody that's interacted with him, and now 7 years into him being premier, and the time but before with his brother as mayor, it's the exact same thing.
Mm.
Go to an event, he's going to read out his phone number on stage, write it down, text him, he'll call you later. And if he doesn't call you
That's
later,
crazy.
he'll call you tomorrow. And so, it's I think that's what the opposition, his opposition, just doesn't understand, is they
They
don't know who
don't get it.
they don't know who they're trying to beat. They don't know. They
Right.
think just like, oh, we need to stop Ford. There's a huge chunk of the province like, why? We like him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can call him and he'll respond to me.
Yeah, we like him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess they're also thinking, well, will Bonnie Crombie call me back?
Maybe from the Hamptons, if you believe our ads.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we have to move on here because we got other stuff to cover, but like, just this is just really good insight, Chris. So thank you for this.
Yeah, thank you.
How does he keep up? Like, you're in a massive room with hundreds of people and you give your phone number. How have you seen him practically try to actually, like, is he calling people at like midnight? Because like,
Yeah. Like, it's just that's what he'd prefer to do. Like, he, in between events, it's like, get back to the car on your phone.
or he's just
Check to
always on his
see,
phone calling.
and just work your way through his call, like old school. Like, I remember, like, the first, my first couple jobs in politics, like the old politicians call list.
Right.
And
Yeah.
he's so old school like that. Like,
Right.
did I respond back to everybody who texted me? Did I call back all my missed calls?
Right.
Did I check in with people? Like, he's the master. Like, I've never seen anybody quite like it. Like, I've got friends that obviously still work in the
Mhm.
building and things like that. But even those that aren't, and it's just like, oh yeah, the premier called me today. Wish me a happy birthday.
Crazy.
Wanted to check in, see how the kids were. And it's
Yeah.
just, you can't buy that kind of loyalty.
Nope.
And when it comes that way first, it's the cult following makes so much more sense. Like, I remember, like, the first in 2018, after he won the leadership, we had a rally out here, actually same building we were at yesterday, for our third consecutive majority government.
Oh, you just
victory.
gotta slip that in there.
Yeah,
Eh?
just to remind everybody. But like, the rally for the Ford Nation rally, and it was just like the people in that room, it was like everybody loved the man, and it was
Yeah.
every walk
Wow.
of life. And it's because these were people that he's connected with on a personal level. And there's still, if you drive up the 400 north of Toronto, there's still the guy's business that has had some variation of a pro Ford family billboard that they make themselves for, I think, the last 15 or 20 years. And it's just like,
Yeah.
it was there when Rob was mayor. It was there when Doug was running for mayor. And there's just this incredible loyalty to the family because
Right.
they've shown it back to their constituents for
Mm.
years. And it's why you could run, like, Mike Ford, his nephew, didn't run again in
Yeah.
this election, but when he ran in 2022, we ran Mikey in York South Weston, which is probably the worst riding you could ever imagine for a conservative to win in the maybe even the entire province, like one of the hardest, just based off the demographic breakdowns
Yeah.
and a riding we'd never win. You put a Ford on that lawn sign, and Mikey won.
Yeah.
And I think I'd have to go back to the numbers. I think we won it again
Right.
last night. Or it was damn close at the time the final polls came in. Like we because you go in the ground, like that's what that family does. You don't take for granted the years between elections.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You go to every community event and you talk to everybody, and they're so charming that you win people over. Like most people don't. Like how many people know their politician, right? Like
They don't.
how many people have ever met like their local counselor? But if you make the effort to go where the voters are and not expect them to come to you, it works. And that's why I think we were criticized for not participating in debates or this and that. And Doug's response at every press conference when he'd get criticized was, I'd rather my candidates be knocking doors.
Right.
Yeah.
And anybody that's ever been to a local all candidates debate, it's like, okay, you're going to have 150 people in a school auditorium, and 148 of them have their minds made up on who they're voting for. And so like, is that really the democracy we're not participating in? I'm not sure it is anymore. It's like, you do a couple of hours of debate prep, at least getting your candidate ready for that. The couple hours for the debate,
at least a couple hours. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, exactly. Depending on who your candidate is, right? Like you're talking hours and hours of prep.
Yeah.
To talk to a room of decided voters instead of spending those hours and hours and hours going to knock on people's doors and having conversations on their doorstep. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's you do have to kind of white knuckle through the media noise. It was like, oh, they're skipping this debate. It was like, well, I've had some conversations with folks in the media about this. It was like,
doesn't matter.
Those voters could kick us out if that really mattered to them. And you kind of see this light bulb go off in their head and they hate it. And it's like, well, I guess you're right. Like, I guess you're right. Yeah. Just like the snap election, if people were really pissed, they could vote us out of office.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like they get a ballot, and that's how this works. Right. And so I think at the end of the day, that's the big thing.
All right. Final question. Actually, two-part final question. You mentioned Brad Wall earlier about legacy long-term majority wins. Brad Wall stepped down before he would have had his fourth, or Derek, you know better. Yeah. So does Doug go for the fourth? Does he go for the Ford Pete, or does he step down? Who would take over? Like, I guess Stephen Lecce is probably one of the top people that I can think of. Maybe Pacini. I mean, maybe you're just come off the high of the campaign trail. Maybe you don't want to sound like you're talking down the premier of, this is who's going to replace you.
Well, I mean, thankfully the premier gave me the best talking point you could have in the closing days of the stretch. He got asked that question. And to quote Doug Ford, I want to be premier forever. I want to.
I believe him too.
I do, and I've said this to clients of mine for a long time, and they kind of looked at me with scratching their head. They're like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "No, he loves the job. Like you
do get that vibe, yeah."
He loves being premier. And so when he was asked about this on like the second last day of the campaign, he said, no, I love being premier. I want to be premier forever if I can be. I want to do it. I want to do what Hazel McCallion did. Like I want to be, I want to be the premier as long as people have me. And so not to belittle our incredible bench strength. And a lot of people I consider friends like Stephen and David and Caroline Mulrooney. Like there's an incredible roster of people that could replace him.
Yep.
But I don't think he's like
not going anywhere.
I'm not going to. He'll leave when he wants to leave. I just don't think that's there's a reason I joked about trademarking Ford Pete. Like I think I think he'll go for the Ford Pete, and if he can win it, he'll go for the 5 Pete. Like I think he loves being premier so much. It's like you can't wipe the grin off his face. I've seen him with stakeholders and meetings of every walk of life, and that guy just lights up when he meets people, and he just wants to talk about what they're doing for the people and wants to listen to what their concerns are. And he'd rather be in a room full of people, potential voters, than sit around his caucus table any day of the week. And that, going back to what we talked about, is like that's his special sauce. Like he he actually doesn't care about the political world the same way so many of his predecessors do. He looks at it from such a different angle as like, how do I listen to people? How do I just, he just wants to like I said, like I've never seen the guy, like the guy lights up. You bring stakeholders, you bring a group into his office, and his favorite shtick that anybody to tell you is his office at Queen's Park. He jokes he's never sat in his office chair, and he's
really?
no, he's like, that chair's for the people. And so, a group comes in and it's, the chair of an organization. He's like, no, if you're going to take a photo, you sit in this chair, and you'll scroll through his Instagram, his Twitter account. You'll never see him sitting in the chair at his desk. It's like, no, that's the people's chair, And so you sit there, I'll stand beside you, but like, that's your chair. And I really do think people don't understand, like, that's the mantra that runs through him, that ran through his brother. It was like, I'm here on behalf of you. And his opponents have yet to figure out how to top that, because it's real.
Hard to top.
He's real, and when you're the authentic one in the room, Derek, you mentioned it from like a marketing standpoint. Like, when you're the authentic guy, it's really hard to beat, because everybody else is so stage managed, right? And it's so scripted. Like, you look at Bonnie Crombie on the campaign trail, it was like so incredibly scripted, that when you're forced to, you're so fake, so unauthentic, and you're up against this guy that like is every bit the guy he pretends to be. It's not pretending. He's just Doug's Doug.
Can we do, actually, this is going off script a little bit, but going to Jagmeet Singh's ad, which is the sin bin. I just want to contrast that with what you're saying here right now, because
fair. Let's
watch this ad. I have it up here.
Sure.
Because I think it's just such an interesting juxtaposition here. Okay, so this is the new Jagmeet Singh ad where he is a boxer.
Big campaign ad. That's their big.
Yeah, this is huge. They spent a lot of money on this. So let's watch.
I wasn't raised to be a politician. Never dreamed of becoming one. I worked for minimum wage to take care of my family when my dad was sick, and made it out of law school to see the system only works for those at the top. So I got in the ring to take on the powerful few and fight for you. It's time for someone in your corner, especially when times are tough. I won't back down. I won't stop fighting for you. I'm ready. I wasn't ready.
There he goes. Okay. So what are your responses to that? Does that seem authentic to you? Is that who Jagmeet Singh really is?
Is anyone raised? Like, what do you mean raised to be a politician? Like, from birth? Like,
he worked minimum wage.
Like, what the heck?
Worked minimum wage, about? Greg. Like,
shoot! Oh gosh,
this is the worst part of the ad, where it's like, I was never raised to be a politician, and I work for minimum wage, and I'm fighting all these big rich people. You're the big rich person, Jagmeet.
You are the guy that you're fighting.
Yeah, you should be fighting yourself.
I think this ad would have been great 8 years ago.
Yeah,
when he first got elected. But that's the thing. It's like it's 8 years too late. And so if you know anything about Jagmeet Singh, at this point you've seen the ads. It's the Maseratis and the Rolexes and the tailored suits. And so sure, I guess you made minimum wage back in the day, but like, kudos to you for working really hard. But instead your money that you made is buying, $5,000 bespoke suits. And so it's, the ad screams of me is they've had this concept waiting in their head. And Derek, you'd know this better than anybody. Like, to me, it was like, thank God the other boxer finally retired so we can put out our boxing ad.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it was like, we can't do this with Justin, because like, if Justin challenges Jagmeet to a fight, Justin might beat him. So we can't do that. But now that Justin's out of the fight, we're pretty confident.
Looks a little stiff in those ads.
Yeah.
His boxing.
Exactly. Well,
he also wasn't sweating. He wasn't even sweating.
Well, and if you actually know, like, the history of, like, this has always been our joke, is like, who would win a fight between the two of them, because Jagmeet's my understanding was Jagmeet's not a boxer by like athletic training, but he was big into jiu-jitsu. And so, that doesn't make nearly as an interesting of an ad of him him rolling around with some guy, rolling around with some guy on a mat, like trying to like, you know, choke him out. Like it's not far more vicious and less attractive. So that going back to your question, Derek, it's like, it's just like, you're not a boxer, you know, you're younger and I guess you're fit, but like, none of this is true. And you'd think like, you'd think people clue in, especially in this era where like information can spread so quickly across social media. Like you can get fact check in a heartbeat. You think about like the Carney line out of the debate, the English debate, or his scrum about the question about like, you know, moving Brookfield south of the border, and he lied about it. And you know, I'm not going to get ahead of myself and say this is going to torch his political future, but like he made such a mistake and he lied in front of a camera, and people look at you and go, okay, you're a liar. And there's something about that Jagmeet ad that was just like, you're not giving me the straight bill of goods here.
Okay, I got to show you guys something here. So I use this all the time with business leaders, political leaders, whoever. And so this is the marketing archetypes that we've sort of developed at MASH. But what we were talking about before is everyone should have their own lane that they stick into for how people know them.
Stay in that lane.
Because everyone has a mental shortcut. Like I think they see Doug Ford as the everyman, a guy who cares, a guy who connects, a guy who generally wants to help you. The problem with Jagmeet Singh is he's trying to fit into this bracket here, but that's not him at all. He actually, in my opinion, he looks and acts more like a ruler.
Yeah.
Which is someone who drives Maseratis and wears the Rolex watches and the incredibly tailored suits. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's who he is. Like he makes fun of Galen Weston all the time. Galen Weston is more of an everyman than Jagmeet Singh is.
Yeah.
Like
or Galen's much more in common with who Jagmeet is, right? Like that's part of the problem when he criticizes him. It's like, okay, but like you guys probably share your same, you know, you probably both have your favorite hotels in different islands that you like to stay at. Like, you know,
exactly.
And that's the problem. Like you live in a different world. So I know I couldn't agree more with Derek. Like he tries to be this everyman, these ads, like I'm fighting for you. I care about you. But like, you know, and I think there's something to be said about, I think everybody's trying to find, I'd say lately in political circles, everybody's trying to be the everyman, right? Like I think even like, you know, Trump finds a weird way of bridging the gap between both being the ruler and the everyman. You know, it's perplexing. I actually can't explain it, and it's what makes Trump, right? It's like
he's an anomaly.
Very unique, anomaly. Yeah,
he really is. Like he's unquestionably the ruler. I mean, you know, he's gonna.
Well, to me, he's actually for me is the outlaw.
Well, I mean, you could go actually a bunch of these, and like I think they're all actually true about Trump, which makes him such a fascinating,
he's a weird character. Yeah,
he's the outlaw ruler.
Yeah, he's kind of an outlaw ruler. Yeah. But he does have everyman vibes to him. You're right, Chris. Like
I mean, the people love him. Like people think they're like Trump. You know, like this guy that's making Trump Gaza AI video jokes about, you know, how redeveloping Gaza. He's like, this guy's nothing like you. But like they see him in the same way, but going back to like Jagmeet, and like, you know, there's something to be said about pretending to be somebody you're not, and I think that's what he's trying to be. I mean, and it'll be interesting to see how this, you know, how they try to portray Carney moving forward. But I mean, I don't even know where I put Carney on this board right now.
Well, he would be. Yeah,
probably the ruler too. Like I think he wants to have that like steady hand. I'm the guy to take over. Give me all the power, and I'll make everything better for you. Kind of,
but he does have CV power. Like he's like, you know,
but he's also. I think he's also trying to do the everyman thing because he's like, I'm not a politician. I'm a pragmatist. I'm like, does that pragmatism involve moving your company to the United States, Mr. Carney? Okay.
The one thing you can give Justin Trudeau is that he never pretended to be the everyman. He pretended to be a super fancy pants politician. You know, progressive dude. And that works for him. So like for Jagmeet, I would say, if you're a ruler, lean into being the ruler. You can still share the same message, but you have to do it from a platform of being a ruler. That's totally fine. Like that's legitimate. And that's how you win. Because when people sense you not being authentic, they recoil and they're like, ugh. And that's why Jagmeet Singh is completely irrelevant nowadays. It's really sad for conservatives who are trying to win an election. You can't get a vote split because the NDP do nothing federally right now.
And I think Justin partly failed because he was trying to be the hero, and he wasn't at all. And everyone disliked him, and he just would never admit it that he was disliked, and that's what ultimately did him in.
Yeah, he tried some few Hail Marys at the end, but it didn't work.
It's an understatement.
Let's go into the second play with
Carney. Let's move into
We talked about it a bit.
Carney. So yeah, the big gaff. You already mentioned it, Chris. Where was it? I can't remember if it was after the English or after the French. Either way, it was in a scrum with journalists, and one of the journalists asked him, and it was funny. The journalist said, "You were the vice chair," and Carney jumped on him and was like, "No, no, no,
No,
no!
I was the
I was
chairman.
the chair.
Chairman.
I was the
Yeah.
chair. Thank you very much."
Man.
So it's like that was actually your first gaff. Was like pouncing on this journalist to like make sure everybody knows you were the chair, not the vice. And then they asked him like, well, you know your company Brookfield, big asset management firm out of Toronto. You moved your headquarters to New York. Why was that? And he said, oh no, that was done after I left. And then the first of all, before we do the CPC fact check, we already knew this. There was already like Financial Post headlines, Bloomberg headlines about the fact that this happened in November.
It was well documented.
We already knew it. And so like then he comes out with the lie and the CPC pulls out their fact check receipt like, aha, here's your signature on this document from November. Actually, technically, I think the document was from December because the board had actually already approved it. And he was now going to the shareholders, begging them to like follow through with this move. Like, how do you do, like, who's advising you that didn't warn you about this? Is it that you're so incompetent that you just you blundered a lie on national TV, or are you so arrogant that you thought you could just get away with it? I honestly don't know.
I'd go a bit of even a different angle, Greg. It's just you just think you think you're so entitled that you wouldn't get asked that kind of question, and so you don't listen. Like, I mean, first off, from a political angle, terribly briefed. Like how that wasn't on. How that wasn't on your, Q&A issues training, I don't know, or it was, and you just didn't listen. Like to your point, that takeaway from that clip that I'll remember for the rest of my life was exactly how you led with this. So you were the vice chairman? No, I was the chairman. And he said it so stoically. Like, how dare you? Like, what do you mean?
How dare you plebeian?
Yeah, like, I was the chair. I would never settle for being anything less. Like that's how that's how it came off. But then like just you fast forward in that exchange, and it really does. You're just like, you're sitting there perplexed. Like, how were you not prepared for this question? Like, how were you not prepared to answer about moving the company you were the chair of south of the border in this political climate with everything going on?
It's a big thing. Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said. Like, my real takeaway of that entire exchange is actually, I think, more speaks to the liberal leadership race in general.
Yeah.
And I mean, this thing has felt like a coronation for the last couple, I'd say like the last 80% of the race has felt like a coronation. It felt
for
like
sure.
It felt like there was a stretch there where if you bought into like, Freeland's resignation, that this was going to be a dogfight between, screw Trudeau, he booted me out, and Carney's, the Trudeau savior. And it's been anything but. It's literally just, parlayed into this, truly a coronation of Carney.
Yeah.
And the debate spoke to it too, that there were no punches that were thrown.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that, like, there's a reason leadership races exist here. There's a reason primaries exist south of the border.
Yes.
And we've seen some examples lately of what happens when you ignore that, that principle. Like, Kamala couldn't win a single primary vote in 2020. She was awful as a candidate, and they just thought, we're going to give you her and you're going to like her. And I think we're going to see, and she bumped up in the polls. They had their big DNC, the convention, and musical artists introducing her. And, I think they waterboarded Taylor Swift to endorse her. And it did everything they could to make people like her. And at the end of the day, it's just like, it didn't resonate, because like, that's what a primary was for, right? Like, when she was out, going back to what we just talked about, Doug, when she was crisscrossing the country, going to, the events in Iowa and New Hampshire and Maine, she couldn't resonate if her life depended on her. And, fast forward to Ontario, and you look at, like, I think Marit Stiles had a pretty good night last night, all things considered, where their popular vote was. Like, if there was if there was somebody whose obituary was being written for her, she woke up this morning pretty damn happy, because, she's still the official opposition leader, got a little bit of a bounce in her step, but she couldn't introduce herself for the life of her to Ontarians because like they didn't have a leadership race. They appointed her.
Yeah,
Like
that was such a
nobody,
mistake on their part.
if you
Major mistake.
if you go back to that race, nobody ran against her.
No.
And then you look at the Liberal race here in Ontario, and Bonnie was essentially appointed. I mean, there was a race, but that party wanted this to be a coronation of Bonnie. I think it was, frankly, if anything, it was closer than anybody expected, with Nate Erskine-Smith running a bit of an outsider campaign against her. But when you don't get battle tested in a leadership race, when people don't see you, and frankly, you don't get the experience of being in a fight, you know, to Jagmeet, it's like, I'd like to see how you do in a boxing ring, because I don't think you've ever boxed anybody before, right? And so politics is a boxing match. Like it is a fight. And I think you fast forward to what we talked about, Carney, is like, okay, well, like you're about to go toe-to-toe with Pierre Poilievre, who's one of the most skilled communicators I've ever seen in my life in politics.
Yes, very good.
And you're going to go up against Yves Blanchette in a French debate, who is he's a weapon. Like he is a hell of a debater. He is good. Like he's shameless, and he'll punch anybody, and punches above his weight for a bit of a little guy. And I think there's a big mistake that like you're going to see moving forward with Carney is they've put him in bubble wrap. And so, you know, you come back to your question about like, you know, how does you make that mistake? It was like, well, you've hid from the media. You've hid from your opponents. You didn't have a debate until like 2 days before voting opened. And I think that's because they knew it for a reason. It's like, this guy's not ready for prime time. I caught a bit of the debate a couple times, and I'll never forget like his there was the one moment like when he clarified on no, I'm the chairman, but the other was at one point he agreed with, I think it was Freeland, and he was like, you know, I agree with that comment, but I'd like to make an amendment to that comment. And I was like, who speaks like that? But the truth is the chairman of a board speaks like that,
not the vice chair,
because you know they have their secretary down the boardroom table taking the minutes of the conversation, and they need to note that the chair made an amendment to the motion, and that's like he talks like he's still in the boardroom.
And he wants to do the I'm a pragmatist, not a politician, and the Liberals are trying to hammer Pierre on being a career politician, but guess what?
Not going to work.
Being a career politician is a skill. It takes years to polish, like any job, and it comes with a ton of benefits. And in this world, being a skilled politician is a good thing. Like with Doug Ford, he's a very good politician because he fits his, we've already talked about it. He fits his character. He sticks with it. He doesn't deviate. He sticks to his message. He knows his message. He talks about it and he talks about it at a person to person level. He's not using amendment and all these other fancy people words, big book learnings in my brain. Got no space for anything else in there. And so it's actually a strength. And the Liberals in their hubris refuse to see that.
I just want to really talk about the chirp of the week, which is hilarious, that showed up this morning. And that is the Spectator World. This is Trump now talking about Pierre Poilievre. He's actually chirping Pierre. So the interviewer is saying, oh, the Conservatives are down in the polls. Are they still going to win? So funny that they're even asking Trump about the Canadian election for some reason. And Donald J. Trump says, well, I think his biggest problem is he's not a MAGA guy. You know, he's really not. He's not a Trump guy at all. Oh, he's more like a throwback Republican. Yeah, he's different. Making a big mistake. He's a big mistake, you know. And he kind of goes on about this. And I think this helps Pierre, for one.
This is a big help to Pierre, yeah.
Big help to Pierre. But also hilarious that Trump's out here talking about Canadian elections and the political system that's going on here. I've just never seen this really happen before, where a sitting U.S., with Trump, everything's new. But a sitting U.S. president being like, this guy's not enough like me, and this is why he's going to lose an election. And what is going on here? So this is a hilarious chirp and a hilarious moment in Canadian politics, in my opinion. Very different. What do you guys think?
Chris, I'll let you take the first word.
I mean, it's Trump, like there's no other way to put it. It's just like he shoots from the hip like nobody else. I mean, he's actually probably like the truest thing about those comments is that they're true. I'd actually say Pierre is much more of a throwback Republican. I think there's some irony that he's probably, Pierre's much more like the president's vice president than he is the president. There's no question about that. I think Pierre and Vance are much more in common. And I think there was a reason. I think there was some optimism that the relationship might be a bit better because of, the story's been written about Jamil Javani, in the conservative caucus going to Yale with Vance, that there'd be some kind of positive relationship between the White House and the conservatives. But I was kind of just waiting for the day for this to happen, because I was curious.
Yeah.
More curious than anything was like, what might his nickname be for Pierre? Because like the guy gives everybody a nickname. And I think all things considered, I agree, Derek. I think it comes off as this is probably a net positive for Pierre in the Canadian market. Donald putting a little bit of distance between himself and Pierre is a good thing. If you're the federal conservatives, you couldn't ask for a better line to deal with the Canadian establishment, we'll call it, the media kind of, then for him to say he's not really a MAGA guy. Perfect. Thank you, Donald. Like, like, thank you. This was even better than the comment you made about Gretzky. Like, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But then in the same breath, like, oh, he's a throwback Republican. Perfect. Check. Yes. So you called me
actually great.
You called me a conservative, but not a MAGA conservative.
Yeah. Like Ronald Reagan. Who doesn't love Ronald Reagan?
And I mean,
that's a throwback Republican.
I think Pierre would happily consider himself, I think he sees himself as like a Reagan Thatcherite conservative, right?
Yeah, he is.
So,
he is.
And he really is. And so, I'd say this is the funniest chirp ever, that I think, by trying to put him down, he actually gave him a benefit. Like, it was like, you're not like me. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not saying nice things about me. I don't really like that. That was the end of the quote. I should have read the whole thing. I thought that was hilarious. Like, you just don't. I don't like what you're saying. It's not very positive about me.
Yeah,
like, it's just a whiny little petulant kind of comment. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I know we got to wrap it up here. So, Greg, is there anything else you think we need to cover?
So just some quick stick taps. I wanted to give a stick tap to Sid the Kid, Sidney Crosby. This day, 15 years ago, scored the golden goal, did Canada proud.
Beautiful moment.
And right off the heels of the Four Nations win, which was beautiful. America can apply anytime to become our 11th province or 4th territory, whatever we feel like, whenever they send the paperwork in.
Yes.
So good for him. Good. Thank you for defending and standing up for Canada and being a hero.
I like that. Chris, do you have any stick taps for anybody? Who's a good person we need to shout out?
You know what? I'll go off the heels of that. We're talking Canadian hockey jerseys. It has to go to Doug and his campaign team. But the closing imagery that was just so powerful was him in the Canada hockey jersey with the Never 51 on the back. And I mean, just to the Premier, Corey, Michael, the campaign was just a master class in how to run an election campaign. Dominated from day one, no mistakes, and just that closing image. I've already ordered a custom Never 51 jersey that we're going to get framed and put up in the office, because I think it's so symbolic of what the times we're going through, but also just a memory that'll live forever in my head, is just how probably the best run campaign I've ever seen, been anywhere close to. And so, kudos to Doug, Corey, Michael, the whole campaign team here in Ontario.
Good for them. Yeah. Derek, what's your stick tap?
Well, I'm going to say whoever did the song, We're Going to Fight For You song. I have no idea who it was, but I love it because
total banger.
Yeah, it apparently got repeated 1,000 times last night, and it's in Chris's brain, and it's melting his brain.
We're gonna fight for you.
Yeah. Can you sing the whole song, Chris?
No. The funny thing on that is it's way longer than you actually think it is. Like, it is a full song, and then they clip it just that last little bit. And so I'm sure the guys in the war room had the song on repeat like the entire 4-week campaign.
Oh, yeah.
But it actually is like so the song and a beautiful video montage introduced the Premier when he came out to speak last night. And it's long. Like, I was like, is this the same song? Because this guy's talking about
going
that we're protecting Northern Ontario and we're protecting jobs, and then like it finally gets to the fight for you slogan at the end, and it's nice. A really, really, really long song. So
it's like the song that never ends. It goes on and on, my friends.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, hey, Chris, thanks so much for doing this. It was fun.
Hey, it was a pleasure, guys. Yeah.
And really good insights on the Ford campaign.
I think thank you.
People have to really remember a lot of the insights you gave there for when they're working with business leaders or political leaders, and how to be yourself and how to be a great retail politician. I think getting back to people actually caring about their needs, giving people your number when maybe you shouldn't it's a strategy, and it works. And really truly working hard and caring about whoever your clients or customers are is a massive learning. So,
we heard there was a lot of whining on Twitter today about like, first past the post and Doug Ford, blah blah. How about you just stop whining and don't be a loser? That's loser talk. Get
Yeah, work
better.
harder.
Be a better campaigner. Work harder.
Work harder. That's exactly that.
Work harder. Put your phone number out there. Hey, thanks,
All
gentlemen.
right.
That was great.
Yeah,
Cheers.
thanks, guys.
Take care, everybody. Thanks again to our subscribers. Everybody like, subscribe, invest, whatever the things that you do. Hit a bell notification.
People can invest in us now? Awesome. I like
Sure,
this.
yeah, that's got to be a thing.
I'm sure
It's got to be. All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks.